that don't know Better Earth Media yet. So my name is Annalisa, and I'm the co-founder of Better Earth Media. I'm also Italian, you might hear that. And I'm the event producer today of Better Earth Talks. Some of you might know me as Inanna, my artist name. My journey actually towards Better Earth started together with my journey as an artist, because some years ago I decided to dedicate all my art and music and initiatives to nature and animals and the future. And in that line, I discovered that I had a very aligned mission with a dear friend of mine, Jane, because we both wanted to do more. We wanted to communicate about it, and we wanted to invite people in. So we wanted simply to do as much as we could to contribute to the very necessary cultural shift that we're going through these times in our relationship with nature and the other earthlings. So when we met, we co-founded Better Earth Media, and we did it in the spirit of doing more, spreading knowledge, celebrating change, gather like today, and inspire. Better Earth Media was born with the idea of promoting and supporting everything that is better for animals, for the planet, and for humans as part of the earth and not as an entity separate from it. And as a nonprofit, we aim to amplify all those voices that really need to be heard more and more and everywhere, especially in order to normalize the environmental discourse, because it's still too often marginalized, especially in the media. And we really want to contribute to put it right at the center of culture, as it really should be in these urgent times. We aim to promote knowledge about the better choices for the future of the planet, because knowledge is empowerment and awareness always leads to change and progress. We decided better and not best because we're not here to promote perfection, absolutely. We're here to celebrate all the progress that humans can make every step of the way, from where we are and from the things that we can do. But in these urgent times, what we can do and what we can change is actually becoming an imperative. But we all know that there is no durable change without awareness, a deep understanding, connection, and emotion. So what we're trying to do here and in all our events is to create that emotion in the sense of movement, to hopefully set in motion further changes inside and outside, for a culture that is not separated from nature, and for a culture that always considers the deep time of the earth. And without further ado, I want to introduce the host of the evening, my colleague and dear friend, co-founder of Better Earth Media, ultramarathon runner, author, speaker, senior director of people and operations at In Defense of Animals, mom, and our host this evening, Jane Elizabeth.
Thank you, Annalisa. Hi, everybody. How are you doing this evening? All right. You know, there's like 100 of you in here, and I think I heard maybe 12. Let's try that one more time, okay? Hi, everyone. How are you doing this evening? I see some people I know very, very well, and I see some faces that are very unfamiliar, and I want to extend a heartfelt welcome to everybody. I can't wait to speak to every single one of you. Hopefully I get a chance to. At these events, we really do encourage people to mix and mingle, meet people you've never met before, talk to people, because we all do share this one common thing, right? That we all care so deeply for the environment. We want to be making better choices, and we want to be able to spread awareness, knowledge, and influence people to do things that are taking care of the environment. And by doing that, we're also taking care of ourselves, which is actually pretty nice. Lisa, I've got your notes here. I don't think I need those, do I? Okay. We should just go off the cuff. So that's, I'm going to hand that to you, actually. Can I do that? Thank you. All right. So we are just so grateful to be here at the Soho House. This is actually our third event here, and we are extremely grateful. We are part of their sustainability club, which is just fantastic, right? Because this is something that I think maybe 10 or 20 years ago, it was maybe a thought, maybe a whisper, and now I think it's starting to be more of a roar. People are really taking charge, they're empowered, they want to know what they can do, the actionable items, not just ideas, not just things that we hope for someday, but actual things we can do now and what we can do in the future to make a real difference. And that is the spirit, like Annalise was saying, of what we're doing with Better Earth Media, because with every single person doing what they can, we all collectively can make a difference. It's easy to feel like you can't, but I'm here to tell you, you can. All right, so we want to also thank, I don't know, how many of you tried the cheese, the plant-based cheese from the street? So delicious, right? Oh my gosh. We want to thank them for bringing this incredible plant-based cheese selection for us. It is absolutely delicious. If you haven't tried it yet, if they have any left, I definitely recommend doing so, because it is, yes, she says, there is some left. We would also like to give a shout out to our supporters. We learned to do this at the beginning of the evening, because if we wait till the end, nobody's paying attention. So, so we'd like to give a shout out now to Aspire and Music Declares Emergency US, and a big shout out, of course, to our wonderful sponsors who kindly have provided some of the snacks that you have here. So these are, again, better choices for the planet and for you as well. So A&E Networks, Abbott's Butcher, Omer, Emmy's Organics, we have Hippies, we have the Creek Vegan, Liquid Death, which that's the water here. You don't need to be scared of it. It's not going to kill you. It murders thirst, and that's all. So don't worry. All right. Outstanding Foods, Rhythm Foods, Savor by Susie, The Good Bean, Vegan Printer, and Vegan Chocolate. So in the gift bags, if you're one of the people who are lucky enough to get one of those, judging by the numbers, we're going to have to stuff more bags next time, I think, because we have a lot of people here. There's actually a pen from Better Earth Media, and this, oh my gosh, it's a plastic pen. These people say they're for the environment and sustainability, but they gave me a plastic pen. It's not plastic. It's made from wheatgrass, totally compostable. Little choices make a big difference. All right, so just a housekeeping reminder here, Soho House is a private club, so pictures and videos are not allowed. So however, there will be official photography that we have in the Vilma and Josh. We'd like to give a big shout out to them as well. There's Vilma and Josh. So they'll be providing us with professional photography. So we will have pictures, we will post them on social media, we will tag you if we know who you are. If we don't, feel free to tag yourself if you can do that. And we invite you to, of course, follow and support all the people who are here tonight and the people who have sponsored us, because we are so grateful. And without further ado, let me introduce, of course, who you are all waiting for. You're not waiting for me. You're waiting for the panel, right? So let's get to that. So we'd like to introduce Maggie, Baird, founder and president of Support and Feed, a nonprofit. So Support and Feed, for those of you who don't know, is a nonprofit dedicated to promoting a global shift to an equitable plant-based food system to combat food insecurity and the climate crisis. So welcome, Maggie. We're so grateful that you are here. This paperclip is really my nemesis tonight. Hold on just a second. Yes. That's much better. Thank you. All right, and Isaias Hernandez. So thank you for being here tonight. So he's an environmental educator, activist, influencer, public speaker, founder of A Queer Brown Vegan, a media platform of over 100,000 followers. He works with businesses, institutions, and organizations to amplify and empower their environmental missions. Thank you for being here. And of course, we have Katie Cleary. Come on up, Katie. She's an actress, model, film director and producer, founder of the animal welfare organization Peace for Animals, founder and editor-in-chief of World Animal News, executive producer of award-winning documentary Give Me Shelter, director and producer of award-winning documentary Why on Earth, and director, oh, I already said that one. I was going to give you more credit even. You don't need any more, you've already done so much. And we know you're going to do so much more because that's just who you are. And we are going to be actually speaking with her about Why on Earth during this panel discussion. Thank you three so much for being here tonight. I cannot wait to sit here and talk with you. And I have a feeling with it, the three of you and the two of us will probably have to be minding our time a little bit. Otherwise, we could talk all night. And you guys wouldn't mind if we just talked for 3 hours, right? I'm kidding, you guys. All right, and last but not least, my co-host for the evening, I want to introduce you all to Anders Dunker. He is a philosopher, environmental journalist, writer, and Better Earth Media collaborator, and a dear friend of mine as well. So, Anders, come on up.
Yes, thank you. It's great to see the room so full of people. It's wonderful. I'm just going to say a few words to frame it a bit. We know what we're all about. We think, we hope, but we need to remind ourselves. So, I just want to pick up on a thought by Jeremy Rifkin, who is a social theorist. And in his latest book, called The Age of Resilience, he writes about the environmental movement. And he claims that it's no less than a fundamental shift in the whole consciousness of humankind. And this shift is it comes at the same time as a scientific discovery of our bacteria in our gut, the fact that our whole body is an ecosystem and that we're so deeply connected to the whole ecosystem of the planet. And so, such realizations, they give us pause, and they make us feel like we're part of a very real, bigger community. And such realizations also, they bring us closer to a new culture of empathy. Because empathy is about bonds, and realizing these bonds are so real and so fundamental, it changes us, and it can change us. So, when we have those realizations as individuals, we can do things, we can try to change, but there is no big change, no durable change without a movement. There is also no, perhaps, real social hope for a change of the direction of history without a social movement. So that is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how you go from the individual impulse and your individual realization to building something, to building a community that is connected to everything. So that's where I want to start. So it's a big things. And Maggie, you've done big things with your organization, Support and Feed. It was born during the lockdown of COVID-19, and I find it so interesting. You showed how a situation where people were isolated and sometimes even like literally competing for food and necessary items, it could become a social movement of solidarity instead. So can you tell us a little bit about how you built the organization, and also just how is the social mission connected to the food system and to protecting the planet?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I see so many people in here today that I would happily come and hear you speak, all of you. So I feel honored, and I've learned so much from Isaias. I've learned so many things from so many people in this room. And I can only go back to, in my case, my learning, it grew in profound ways since that time in early 2020. But long before, I'd grown up in western Colorado, really exposed to nature. And oddly, my father was a hunter and a fisherman. I'd sit in a boat with him all day, and I grew such a profound love of nature and care about the planet. Interestingly, I then also told him I never wanted to eat any of those things, nor did my brother. So I had a really early connection with eschewing animal agriculture as a diet. So, but it gave me this profound love of the outdoors, which I want to say I'm 63 years old. So I think for many of you, this movement, you're judging things by your young experience, but the truth is, 43 years ago, 45 years ago, we were talking about this, these things have been around for so long. So for me, when you talk about, where we've come, the growth is, in the last few years, is so monumentally quick compared to so many years before where you could barely get a conversation like this. Couldn't get anyone to listen to you about anything. People wrote books and had lectures and, it seemed like no one cared. So that's the encouraging thing. So Support and Feed, came out of a time when I had been on tour with my daughter, and we were really excited about how we were trying to make touring more sustainable with plant-based food and recycling and composting and all those things which had kind of become my mission because of the nature of my family's life. And then the pandemic started. And all I could think was, so many people will be hungry and so many restaurants will close and there will be so much suffering and can't we do something about it? So with the help of many people who are in this room, we very quickly formed an organization just with the goal of just trying to get nourishing plant-based meals to people who needed them. And because they would be plant-based, they would help the climate and they would support the local economy. But then we stepped into this world where we saw that these systems, the massive amount of programs in our society that deal with food insecurity weren't looking at the whole picture. They weren't looking at the health of the individuals, and they weren't looking at the planetary impact of what they were doing. So maybe they were feeding someone calories, but they weren't making the most of what they could do on a global level. And when you talk about empathy, I think everything in life is about empathy. If we can empathize with others, we can see, where the challenges lie, where the roadblocks lie, why they got to be where they are, whether they might be to where they are, how can we help them? And looking at even the government with empathy of the challenges of it, how complicated it is to get governmental policy across. It may seem easy to us. So sort of looking at everything with empathy and looking at everything as connected. So that the food system of how we feed individuals who are food insecure is intrinsically entwined with climate change, which affects everyone and disproportionately affects often those who are food insecure. Climate change is often put in a little bubble where it's not connected to human beings, but it's entirely about human beings. Of course, nature and animals, but the planet will survive. We can destroy the climate and destroy civilization, but Earth will go on. It's really all about human beings and animals and nature. So everything is intrinsically related. If you want to give empathy to people who are food insecure, that doesn't mean you don't also have empathy for people who are addressing climate change or people who work in factory farms or human beings who are subjected to all kinds of ills in society. So empathy, I think, is at the core of it. One of the things we do with Support Feed is we work together with organizations. We're not competing. We're not competing for dollars. We're not competing for donors because every meal that we provide is going to another organization, to the families of someone else. So getting a system of support between all of the organizations that feed people, all of the organizations that address climate change, food insecurity, social justice, this is where the solution lies, at that intersection. I don't think I answered your question, but...
Yeah, you did, and you actually answered the one I was going to ask you too. So, I will ask you something else. But we do just want to touch on this, that the name you chose, Support and Feed. I love how it does have that feel of empathy and nurturing. It's not this, there's sometimes a tendency for dominance, which then leads to, of course, exploitation. But when you're talking about support and feed, there's this very nurturing, you're talking about empathy, this empathetic approach to other people. And that's really where it does start, too, because like we were talking about before, you have to meet people where they are. You can't expect people to be where you want them to be. They are where they are, so you need to meet them there, and that's how we're really going to enact change and empower people, right? So I wanted to ask if you have, in the spirit of empathy, that you already kind of answered how that extends into our food system and why these changes are so incredibly important. If you could also touch on something that we just briefly touched on before the panel. I know you started this really amazing initiative, Overheated, and I think we would not be doing ourselves justice, doing you justice, without really bringing this up, the two of you here. So if you could tell us just a little bit about Overheated and what really brought about this idea for this fantastic initiative with you and your daughter, of course, and Support and Feed and Reverb that took place in June, right, in London. Kind of what brought that about, and then what that experience was, and maybe some of the takeaways from that amazing experience.
Well, Overheated was sort of an outgrowth of what we were already doing on the two sides. One was in my daughter Lily's touring and her entire music industry experience, and then the other was Support and Feed. So we were actually Support and Feed along with Reverb, which is reverb.org. They are an organization which helps musicians with sustainability in their touring and their careers. So we were already tabling at every one of the shows on the arena tour, exposing people to other organizations, local organizations, and Support and Feed, getting people to take the pledge to eat at least one plant-based meal a day. Reverb, having people take a climate quiz. All this was happening at every show. And then we realized that we were going to be in London for 6 different shows. And the O2 Arena is unique in that they have sort of almost like a mall around the arena and lots of spaces. So with the help of Billy's team and with Support and Feed and Reverb, we put together this activity called Overheated, and the point, and Isaias was there, Overheated was a sort of a mini climate summit, but for young people really to come and activists to speak. And we had a day of panels. It was, largely people who were Billy's fans and young people who knew what we were doing. Many of these people really had no knowledge. They walked in with no perspective whatsoever, and they could hear people speak on a panel about fashion, sustainability in fashion, food systems, storytelling, et cetera, in a day of speakers and workshops. They could also attend events where they could upcycle clothing. We had a feature, a documentary film, Overheated, that we produced, which was about climate anxiety and climate change, and they could watch that. And so they could do all of these activities at the same time. We also got the O2 Arena to become fully plant-based for 6 days in the entire sales of the arena food. And, we eliminated plastic water bottles, etc. But we started Overheated, which grew into a YouTube channel as well, where we can offer content and are creating more and more content that helps this incredibly impassioned, young, and often inexperienced audience learn some of the basics that many of the people in this room have now, grown to take for granted that we all know. But that's what Overheated is. It continues to be something that we can do with other musicians and other events, etc.
Thank you so much. I just love that, and that we can't have the two of you here without talking about Overheated, because it's such a strong initiative, and I like that particularly it's really involving young people. And that's really where we're seeing a lot of change and a lot of initiative, a lot of growth, because young people want their voices to be heard. Everybody does, but particularly we have people who we really want to empower our young people to make a difference, and they are already, which is incredible. So thank you so much for that, Maggie. I really appreciate you kind of diving into that for us. So Isaias, I wanted to move on and ask you a question here about how, on so many different occasions, your focus has been on environmental justice springs. So springs in part from injustice. I'm sorry, I'm going to restart that question. That was very messy. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah, when you ad-lib, but you also have a script, kind of choose one or the other, Jane. It's really helpful sometimes to do that. So your focus on environmental justice springs, in part, from injustices suffered in your own experience. How can we best communicate the importance of this imbalance and create an environmental movement that is stronger because it is more balanced and more unified because it is diverse and doesn't exclude anyone?
Yeah, absolutely, and I hope I can be clear with my response. So I'd say that, I grew up here in Los Angeles, and I grew up in poverty, and my earliest memories of environmentalism was recognizing that, my parents struggled to have access to food. We didn't have clean air outside our backyard, and then we relied on plastic water bottles because the water was contaminated. And when I was a teenager, my dad would take me, because my dad's a gardener today, he would take me to rich, affluent areas in Los Angeles. He had clients in Beverly Hills, in Bel Air, in Calabasas, and I remember being 13, 14, I was maybe 5'10", so I was pretty tall, and I can lie that I was 18. And we would garden in rich people's homes, and I remember that there was this teenager that was my age, and he came out and said, "Why are you working in my backyard?" And I said, "We don't have, this is my job, unfortunately, I don't have a choice." And, it showcased the differences in which, rich people in LA live versus poor people in what their area. And of course it's not their fault, right? That's, their career and whatever they did. But I remember even in high school, I was a hustler, I had to sell chips and soda to afford my first laptop. And I remember Googling the term environmentalism, and I remember showcasing on Google, it was all white environmentalists. And I remember looking up to Discovery and Nat Geo and saying, I wish I could be an environmentalist, but I'm not an expert. And I remember typically seeing on media, usually white old men, being the leaders of the environmental movement. And I would say, I wish one day I could see myself there, but I'm poor, I don't have any experience with the environment. And so when I learned about the term environmental justice in LA, thanks to a woman of color that said that, your zip code determines the environmental health status of your community, I said, wow, all my life I thought my parents and we didn't work hard in life, therefore we deserve to live in this community. But then you realize that it's very deeply systemic. It was race, class, and gender that really affect your ability to actually overcome an environment. And when I was in college, I had this really great discussion, well, not great, terrible discussion with my friend, where they said, I don't see race or color, Isaias, I just see for who they are. And I said, can you name 3 environmentalists that you know in your head? And they said, John Muir, David Attenborough, and Rachel Carson. And I said, why are they all white? Why don't you ask yourself about MLK, who talked about the link between white supremacy and environmentalism? Why don't we talk about Harriet Tubman, who was able to speak to non-human animals and liberate black people who were enslaved by their colonizers? Why don't we talk about other indigenous environmental leaders like Baird, who was brutally murdered because she was just trying to protect her own community, and her own children now are land defenders. And so the dominant environmental movement is not to say that the people that we talk about, why environmentalists are the issues, because they've done great work. I'm saying that we have this unconscious bias in media of when we think about environmentalism, usually think about a white hippie person. And, I think we need to really understand that, thanks to Overheated and Supporting Food, what they do to actually highlight Black, Indigenous people of color, is that we are the ones that are the storytellers. Our experiences are just as valid as our white counterparts, but we haven't really gotten the resources on that. And so when we're talking about amplifying diversity in the environmental movement, let's talk about giving resources, because when you're investing in a Black or brown person of color, you're not just investing in my work as queer brown vegan, you're investing in my family. I am trying to get my family out of generational poverty, and it seems almost sometimes impossible when you're just asking for representation. You're asking, if you really want to help me, just say my name in rooms. That's all I ask. You don't need to give me money. You don't need to talk to me. Just say that you know a person of color, that you can suggest their name for opportunities and resources, and that's not divisive.
And that's all for the evening. No, I'm just kidding. So just one follow-up question. So we like to have actionable things that we can do and some ideas here. So how can we ensure that environmental protection and sustainability efforts do not further harm marginalized communities, but instead provide benefits and opportunities for them. Because this is big, because some people might be sitting here thinking, that sounds really great, and I want to help, but I have no idea what to do. And they might be even kind of too shy or too afraid to ask how. So if you could answer that follow-up question, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I say with like organizations and institutions, even nonprofits, to like hire us to consult. Like, I worked in the industry for almost 6 years from postgraduate, and I always tell organizations, like, if you're going to be working, like one example I say about this is like Grounded, Julia Jackson, that's probably here somewhere. She brought me into the Department of Energy's Clean Energy Summit, in which they talked about how they received a large grant funding to get people of color to start learning about the energy transition. Like, these are economy jobs that are needed by Black and brown people, because when you tell them we're going to take away fossil fuels, that threatens their livelihood. We have to remind ourselves that people that are working in these exploitative industries are Black and brown people, and when you don't give them an option, they're just like, well, what do you want me to do? I don't have any resources to get out of this. The second thing is like really working together to create programs like the Overheated that, Maggie, like Jeanette, my mentor over there that helped co-create this, like to do these resources to give us those opportunities. And I think for the general public to say, what is one thing that I can do is just start to ask questions to companies. Like, I know Tom's of Maine created their incubator program in which we got them to get 5 climate activists of color $20,000 that are in college, and that to me it showcases that businesses do have the opportunities to do so, and let's actually evolve from this idea of like, let's just hold a product and call it an influencer ad. Let's actually give them leadership skills, let's give them professionalism, because when I was in college, my intern job was when I was barely finishing college, and it was so embarrassing to enter the work market and hear all my colleagues and friends that work in the tech industry of like, I got this job or I got this internship when I was 18, and I said, well, I struggled to get my first internship in an environmental nonprofit. So there's really ways in which we can continue on.
Thank you so much for that answer. Fantastic.
Yeah, and what I wanted to ask you, you partly answered too, because I've seen your Instagram and you have a lot of very interesting posts, and you're very good at picking up and creating good concepts. And one of those concepts really spoke to me, because when we think about change, the problems are often so huge, and we think to move this, you need to be huge. So this can be done by politicians, this can be done by powerful corporations and so forth. You need to be huge to do it. And it's very hard to know if you can pin your hope on those people, because you know how power works. So in one of those posts you said, what we need to look at is evidence-based hope. And I like that expression, so I just wanted you to explain it to me and why it is important for us. Sorry.
Yeah, I know thoughts and prayers won't heal the injustice, but build this together. Evidence-based hope was coined by a really great mentor of mine, environmental scholar and PhD activist Ellen Kelsey. It's a way in which it's a sense of optimism that's not just rooted in wishful thinking. It's actually rooted in real-based evidence of continued momentums of movements. And one of the things I always tell people is that, let's say you're in LA or you're in a natural ecosystem or in the outdoors, a lot of us sometimes think, oh my God, the humans have destroyed the planet, it's so horrible, but you cannot know about hope, because hope is not able to be seen. And this really great example is like, I was with her and we were looking at the Monterey Bay, and I'm like, oh my God, there's all the animals are dying because of the pollution. And she says, Isaias, what if I told you that whale-back populations are increasing here in the last 20 years, but you can't see that. You have a very fatalistic approach, because a lot of young people and everyone here, we have institutional betrayal. Like, we really are angry that these systems that said you go to college, you work hard, you'll have a prosperity in life, but that's not true when there's huge wealth disparity gaps, the phobias and the isms that exist that make us even more separated. So evidence-based hope, to me, I use it as a way to not just promote toxic positivity, but to actually give real sensations of these are the local solutions that are happening, like organizations like Support and Feed that are actually activating these events in those areas where I grew up, and it makes me so happy to see that, because I said, if I was young seeing plant-facing the environment, I'd feel so comfortable to ask, like, can I be in this movement? And that's what I want, is to get young people to know their worth, than to feel disempowered.
Thank you so much, Maggie and Isaias, for your wonderful answers. And I mean, we could literally just sit here and talk all night. But we do also have Cleary here, who is an amazing panelist as well. We don't want to leave you out. You're here for a reason. So, Katie, before we proceed, we'd actually like to watch a trailer for Why on Earth.
Done.
It's just breathtaking. The best thing we can do is manage the beautiful things we have. I think that should be just a tagline on everything, just because we have so much beauty around us. There's so much. If we only step into our role as stewards of the earth, which is why we're here, stewards of the earth, stewards of each other and the animals. So this is just incredible. Thank you for sharing this with us. So it's a beautiful film. It's just breathtaking and such a great message as well on multiple levels, because there's a lot here. And I know we won't have time to dissect the entire thing this evening, though I'd like to, separately, maybe we'll go for coffee or something. But so the double meaning of the title points to the question, why on earth are we doing what we're doing? So that's a really huge question that, a lot of us we were raised the way we were raised, right? And I think each generation typically does the best they can with the knowledge and resources they have. In this day and age, we just happen to have such a huge amount of information and resources at our fingertips that, like, my parents' generation didn't have. So we have this ability to use knowledge as power and to make better choices and to really make a difference. And at the same time, why are we on Earth? What is our role? What are we doing here as human beings? What is our task to really being good stewards of the earth? Because surely we're meant to do more than just pay bills and die. We're here for so much more than that. We have such an opportunity to do more than that. So why is it important to come down to these fundamental questions, as personal as they are? Because this will be different for every single person based on who they are, where they come from. So it is a very personal question. It's also as a community, because as we're making these personal choices, as a collective, we really are seeing a shift. We're seeing a movement, and we're seeing real change. So why is it important? These fundamental questions in our everyday struggles with habits, traditions, corruption, and bureaucracies that stand in the way of change.
Well, that's a good question. Why on Earth really came from an epiphany just when I started Peace for Animals, my organization, 11 years ago. I started World Animal News around the same time 11 years ago, and I have a really strong faith and connection to God. And so I grew up in entertainment. I started when I was 11 years old, but I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And my real passion was endangered species, the protection of some of the last endangered species on the planet. And it started with tiger conservation 11 years ago with Born Free. And then it graduated to rhinos and elephants. And elephants and rhinos really because of Shannon Elizabeth, her move to South Africa. And she said, rhinos are beautiful, even though you may think, these other species, the cats, are beautiful, but rhinos need attention because they're on the brink of extinction. So we really wanted to highlight this. This is our second documentary, and I thought, we need to focus on some of these species that we might lose in the next 10 to 20 years. With the last 2 female northern white rhinos, as you saw, we went to go visit in Kenya in Opejita, and it was heartbreaking, the fact that Sudan, the last northern male white rhino, died of old age, and they weren't able to breed him. So they were able to take the embryos from the females and his sperm, and they're going to artificially inseminate a southern northern white rhino to repopulate the species. in Kenya. So, I mean, the fact that we have to take it to this level is heartbreaking. And so I thought, you know what are the top 10 most important issues that we can highlight in the second documentary? This is a sequel to Give Me Shelter, the first one that was released in 2015. And I thought, let's start with elephants and rhinos, and let's be on the ground this time. We didn't have the budget for the first one. I used my savings for Give Me Shelter, and and everyone thought I was crazy. They're just like, why are you using your savings? I said, because I really truly believe in it. And then we were able to sell it to Netflix, and I proved a lot of people wrong. In this one, I said, this is going to be harder to make. The budget's going to be much tougher, and we're going to do it, but we're going to be on the ground this time. So we traveled to 5 countries. We were in South Africa, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Mexico, and the U.S., and Indonesia as well. So we wanted to highlight what the deforestation was happening with orangutans, and just the issues that people are not seeing every day, and they're so removed from it. Even the shark fin trade, they don't see what's happening in the oceans because people are not diving every day, out of sight, out of mind. So really getting back to nature and reconnecting with nature and realizing we are nature. And this is how Why on Earth came about. Why on earth are we doing what we're doing to our one and only Mother Earth? And we're destroying it for what? For money, for greed, for something that we can't take with us when we leave this earth. So we have to leave this earth better than the way we found it. And that's how this documentary came about.
Yes. So, Katie, your film has also won an important award. It's the Cannes World Movie Awards. It's very much centered on films that create social change and that are environmental. And when I saw the the logo, it has it's kind of slogan that says "Remember the future," and I find that amazing. That's a great slogan. And I'm thinking about the future. There's this exercise we can try to look back from an imagined future, and I do it a lot, and I guess everyone does. And when I think about animals, my hunch is that the people in the future will place a much higher value on animals than we do today. That's just more or less bound to happen, given the situation we're in. And in your film, also in the trailer, you say something like, we need to give a higher value to life. To value it more and value it more than money. And this is like one way of phrasing the big question. So I'm wondering, in your experience and your work in the documentary and the people you talk to, how can we do this without just like buying nature back? Buying the rainforest, like paying our way. How can we make changes through mentality shift, or through legal shifts, or other methods where we can really have an impact without having that spending power?
Yeah, I don't think we can buy nature back. We can't buy back what we've destroyed. So we have to restore it. We are the stewards of this planet. It's our job to take care of the creatures of this planet and what we have left, and we don't have much left. Africa's, I believe, where everything began. It's the history of nature, and I encourage everyone, if they can, travel to these places and witness firsthand nature. It'll change your life. Going to Africa changed my life, truly. We've got some people from Africa here right now with us today, but in Indonesia, and seeing these animals firsthand in their natural habitat, it's critical. But we can't buy nature back. I mean, we can protect the rainforest by buying parcels and then having people, on the ground physically protecting it. And that's sadly what we might have to do, in the future. But I think we have to pass stronger bills and legislation in a federal and a state level. They always say so goes California, so goes the rest of the world. And that's why with the legislative efforts that we've worked on, we've focused on California first with the Cruelty-Free Cosmetics Act that we highlight in the documentary, with the Endangered Species Bill, even though that didn't get signed into law, the Cruelty-Free Cosmetics Act did. And then that forced all the cosmetic companies' hands, this is just a fine example, to then go cruelty-free in every state. So they're not going to just go cruelty-free for California. So that took us about a year. That was a big, a big victory, but it was hard because you're fighting some of the biggest corporations that only look on to money. I mean, literally, that's all they're looking at is the bottom line and what's going to line their pockets. But we have the power because we've got the entertainment business behind us, we've got media behind us, and no one's going to stand up and say, yeah, go test on 500,000 animals a year just for vanity and fashion. That's ridiculous. And just like, and I'm going to have to mention it, I know it's controversial, but I was shocked to see what some of the models and people that I've worked with in this industry, what they pulled off in France the other day with the lion head, wearing a lion. I don't care if it's fake or not. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't have happened, and it sets a wrong example, and it fuels the trophy hunting industry. It's not fashion. So I was so disappointed. I'm thinking to myself, I exited the fashion industry at the right time, because now we can really create positive change, worldwide. And we have to use our influence for a greater purpose, not for selfish reasons. So I think that's the key.
Thank you so much for that, Katie, and I agree. If you're looking at it, what can I get out of this? The greater question is, what can I do to make a change, to be a good steward of this earth? And what changes can I make today? Because there are small things we can all do in our daily lives. I think that's actually empowering. It seems really small. It seems like it doesn't matter. It does. Everything you do makes a difference. Because if everybody just throws up their hands and says, it's too small, it's not going to make a difference, I can't possibly do anything, I'm just one person, we see no change. When everybody says, you know what, maybe I don't have a lot of money, maybe I don't have a lot of influence, I can make a difference in the choices, the behaviors, the habits that I do every day, everything I do. I'm going to own what I do first, and then I'm going to show that, right, to the world. And if everybody does that, as a collective, that's how we will make a difference. And so that is empowering when you say it's not just about me and my choices, this is about us together doing something to restore what we have destroyed. Even though maybe it was, generations in the past who led to so much destruction that we've seen on the planet. Is it our fault then? If you come in, you're a young person now, is it your fault? It's not your fault. It is still your responsibility. And I think that right there is power, because you realize that what you do actually does make a difference. So this is very powerful. And on that note, for all three of our panels, I've got a question for you. And I don't know, we'll have to maybe raise hands if you want to answer. I'm kidding, just answer when you want to. So we do live in a fairly competitive world, and unfortunately, nature and animals often pay the price for our competition as humans. And usually it's competition for money, for fame, for power. So how can organizations, new and old, artists, creators, how can initiatives based on empathy create situations where Earth, the animals, and humans all win?
Let's go first.
I'll just throw something in, I think, sort of related to something before, because, I listen to Isaias, and you're always so moving, and it's so emotional to hear you, and I love it so much, and I feel like I'm really just learning all the time from people, and I think, okay, what have I done anything good? And I'm like, honestly, the only thing I think that I do that I think is important is that I ask a lot of questions. And I think that's what everyone can always do. Ask a question. Does it have to be this way? Is there a better way to do it? Who is it hurting? Who is it helping? How is it making the world better? Can we change the way it's always been done? And that, I have seen that creates change. Because when you ask those questions, they have to answer it. And everybody in the room goes, okay, it's kind of mortifying sometimes what the answers are. And I think that all of those questions, if you have the spectrum of issues in your mind, of all the things that everyone is talking about here, and you ask them questions about everyone, and you see that, and there's maybe not a perfect answer, but the question will get you to the best answer at the time, and then that might get someone to create an even better strategy that we can gradually get there. So I don't think there is a perfect way, but I think that if you're always asking the questions and seeing how much good you can do, then you take steps in the right direction.
I love that. Great answer. And do you also feel like celebrating progress? So when you see companies, you see initiatives, you see people really doing their best and making those changes, doing better and celebrating that instead of saying like you're not doing enough, saying I really appreciate what you are doing. This is amazing. Then it encourages them to keep moving that direction. Progress over perfection. It's thank God that is like how I live my life. Otherwise, I'd be so out of luck.
And also, I just wanted to say earlier when you mentioned the gut biome and all of that, I just wanted to return to the idea that indigenous people often already had this innate knowledge and respect, and then we forget about that, and then we go to this other part of history where we're like, oh, now we've discovered this. Well, not discovering it. People have known this for. Yeah,
It's been there.
it's been there. It's just an awakening of certain people to it and a scientifically backed theory now, but it was always there.
Yeah, important point. Easy to forget. That's a piece of knowledge too, that we need to take,
Yes.
that someone knows already.
Does anybody else want to answer that other question? The last question.
I almost kind of forgot the question, but maybe it's like more Tumblr-esque on me, but I always tell my friends, let our eulogy be that we never became loveless in a land that was meant to love. Because the truth is that, I talk a lot about what type of wealth I'm trying to accumulate in my world. And I try to shift it to ecological wealth because that actually is the true set of knowledge of culture, of heritage, of localized systems that have been devalued within our capital structure. If you look at the fauna, flora, and the fungi that are seen as irrelevant or not as important versus this idea of securing so much economic wealth that is essentially not going to be sustainable for future generations. What does it mean to be a billionaire, a millionaire, when your own children in the future are going to be having to pay high amounts of money for clean air, for affordable housing? And I think right now for a lot of young people here, it's I sometimes get annoyed with the question, what is one thing sometimes people can do? Because it's people are, their existence is part of the solution. If you told someone you need to go vegan when they literally are in a housing crisis, a mental health crisis, so many of us right now are at the brink of having a mental breakdown. And I feel the most that we can do is, like you said, celebrate their heritage, because we all have culture. We all have instilled values in which our parents were stop being wasteful, or you need to be able to mend, you need to know how to forage, you need to really reconnect yourself to these landscapes, even if you're unable to travel or if you want to be locally. Start to learn these types of knowledges because it starts to rewire your brain and how you interact with people and what you're valuing. And I realized to myself, I want to be able to, adopt children and teach them that it's not so much of what you want to be, but how you're going to show up for others.
Second that. But I would say lead by example. That's the most important thing. When you're at the beach, you see a big piece of plastic, you see something. People are watching. They're watching what you're doing, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to thank you for picking up that piece of plastic. It's going to end up in the ocean. It's going to end up eaten by a seabird or ingested by a sea turtle, and then it's going to cause death. And so little things that you can do, I would say, got a list, adopt, don't shop. You see an animal that's injured, make sure you call a wildlife rehab. Let's see, there's so many things go plant-based. Try plant-based, that will save a lot of lives. But it's one step at a time. It's not all or nothing. Everyone at their own pace. It shouldn't be 100% because nothing is truly 100%. So I would say start with whatever you feel comfortable, and then a lot of people do get burnt out in this industry or in this movement. So make sure you take a break if you're feeling overwhelmed, like you were mentioning. A lot of people don't take breaks. They just keep going and going and going until they burn out and they can't do it anymore. You have to take care of yourself, especially in animal rescue. And I see this all the time. They just don't know how they can keep pulling dogs or keep finding homes or keep finding fosters. It's just one step at a time. So all at your own pace, and speak up if you see something that's wrong. A lot of people don't speak up. They just let it happen. Do not let it happen. We need to be activists. We need to speak up and use our voices. Otherwise, nothing's going to change.
Thank you for that. So true. And I will tell you, the younger generations, I'm thinking like your next generation, because I'm 42, so I'm kind of looking at lots of generations here in this room tonight. My daughter is 6, and we're at the beach, and there was a balloon, like a plastic balloon, mylar balloon that had washed in from the ocean. And so we went and grabbed it. She goes, but that's not our balloon. Why are you grabbing it from the ocean? I said, it's not our balloon, but this is our planet, and we need to take care of it. And so what are you going to do with that, Mom? I said, well, we're going to take it and we're going to, put it in the garbage because that's where it belongs. It doesn't belong in the ocean. Well, what could happen if it's in the ocean? This is how asking questions. Kids, if you want to know how to ask questions to learn, just close your mouth and be around kids, and they will teach you in about 2 seconds how to ask investigative questions. So I explained to her how it can injure, fish and birds, and there are birds there, and you can see fish, you can see dolphins jumping in the water, and she goes, oh, so that balloon really doesn't belong in the ocean. Yeah, it's a good thing you picked it up and put it in the garbage. So, and she learned the next time you see something, pick it up. So it's not just our words, it's our actions, because kids, they really don't listen to what we say very often. I mean, they do sort of listen. For any parents out there, they emulate what we do. So we do teach by example, we lead by example, and I think we lead each other by example too. I mean, I'm inspired just by, sitting here with you all, and I'm going to ask more questions, and I'm going to be more inclusive.
And more question on that note.
One last question.
We were considering some questions from the audience, but I think there are so many lovely people here, and people have so much to talk about. We need to set aside some time for mingling, so we're going to start wrapping it up. These were lovely answers and very important topics. So,
yes.
So I mean, in your activism, we've all shown that there is this essential creative act that often starts with an idea or an impulse in an individual. And it's like this tiny little moment that could pass unnoticed, but it can grow big, and it can, you collect people around you, and others have the same experience, and before you know it, there's a movement and a media platform or a piece of art. And I think we are, and we must believe that we are part of a big transformation that is actually taking place. And we want it to go faster, so it's kind of our work to accelerate it, and to deepen it, and to broaden it. So we see tonight, I think, and definitely in your work, there is this small beginnings. There are small beginnings that resonate and transform and become something more. And we're living in a time where a lot of things seem to be ending tragically. And it is also our task to make our planet, our Earth, a place for new beginnings. So on that note,
perfect. We actually have one more, so we just wanted to take a few moments. I'm going to invite Annalisa up here. She is, of course, we're good. So we're going to invite Annalisa up here. She's a co-founder of Better Earth Media. She's an artist herself, and one of my dear friends and my colleague. So we wanted to, of course, thank all of you for being here tonight. We want to thank our audience, first and foremost, for being here tonight. It is a Wednesday night. We are in Los Angeles, which is not an easy place to get to, depending on where you live. So we wanted to thank you and show our gratitude to all of you for making the time to be here tonight. You could have chosen to be anywhere, and you chose to be here. So we wanted to thank you all so much for creating the time and space for us to share with you tonight. And we also wanted to thank our wonderful panel here for being here. And I would just like each of you, if you could really quick tell us where we can find you so our audience can support you. So Maggie, where can people follow you so they can support you in what you're doing?
Well, you can follow Support and Feed on Instagram, and of course we have a website and a TikTok and all the things. So that's Support and Feed. You can follow me too, Maggie and Baird, because I tend to put some things on there because I can be a little more political.
And overheated, correct?
And Overheated, yes, that's also on YouTube as well. And YouTube, our Overheated channel, has a lot of content not only about Support and Feed and plant-based food, about environmentalism, food equity, and social justice as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Maggie. It's been wonderful having you here. Isaias, how can we support you and where can people find you?